Joining us now from Capitol Hill, member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Independent Senator Angus King of Maine. Senator King, thank you for being on the show.
Yes, good morning.
The word impeachment has been brought to the fore, and I have heard it come out of your mouth. On what grounds are you concerned that we might need to use that word?
I'm not there yet. I think we've got a long way to go. We've got to slow down and take a deep breath. I think, as everybody has said this morning, including your law professor, Professor Turley, that we really need the facts. We need to see the memos. We don't know what the context was. We don't even have Jim Comey authenticating the memo. We have a memo that's attributed to him. We have the White House saying the conversation didn't occur. We need to see what, if any, evidence they have of that. And, you know, there's a long way to go before we start talking about changing the presidency or removing someone from office. The framers of the Constitution were very careful. We don't have a no confidence vote like they do in many other countries. High crimes and misdemeanors is a very high bar. No president has been removed from office using that. It cannot be used to simply change somebody whose politics we don't like. That would be a real disservice to the Constitution. So I want to focus on getting the facts of what happened in that conversation. It's very serious. If you're talking about the President of the United States, who's the boss of the executive branch, talking to the head of the FBI, suggesting that an investigation, an active investigation, should be terminated, that's a pretty serious matter, and it's one that we really have to get to the bottom of before we start talking about whatever else happens later.
And I'm sure you'd agree with me, Senator King, that when people do talk about impeachment already and they don't slow down and take a deep breath, because a lot of people a lot of respected people across the political spectrum have started using the word impeachment. Doesn't that at the end just play into the narrative that Donald Trump and his supporters would want, which is the media and the political establishment is overreacting and hyperventilating and being too aggressive in their charges against Trump?
I think that's right, and I think the problem is when you talk about an impeachment or removal of a president, you're talking about nullifying an election. And that's something that, as I say, it's never happened. We've had two presidents have been impeached by the House. One resigned, one was acquitted in the Senate. This is not something to be done lightly. It's not the way our system is supposed to work. I've done a lot of research on, years ago, on the Andrew Johnson impeachment. That was a pivotal moment in our history because it was one party trying to get rid of a president of the other party, fundamentally because they didn't like his politics. That cannot happen. We cannot allow that to happen. We've got to focus on whether there was some kind of crime committed.
It's funny you brought that up because I had somebody talking to me about impeachment a couple days ago, again, talking about a legal standard. And I said to him the exact thing. I said, Andrew Johnson was impeached just because the Democrats didn't like him, didn't like his policy. So I think you're right. I think we do need to slow down. You're in a unique position. You have served as a Democrat in the past, but you're an independent from a state that was literally split right down the middle between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton in the 2016 presidential race. What are you hearing, not from your Democratic constituents or your independent constituents? What are you hearing from your Republican constituents?
Well, I think it's as you characterize it. I mean, a lot of folks who supported Donald Trump think there's some kind of Democratic plot to try to nullify the election and snatch away from what they won. And I think one of the mistakes, and I can say this as an independent, the Democrats have to listen to these folks. They have to understand that, 60+ million people voted for Donald Trump, whether or not, the popular vote versus the electoral vote, but the country is split down the middle, and somebody has to start listening to the other side. Otherwise, we're essentially two countries, and so that's why I think we have to take great care in this matter. We can't turn a blind eye to obstruction of justice if that's what it turns out to be, but at the same time, we can't use it as a pretense to try to reverse an election that many people didn't like the results of.
Well, and I totally, Senator, understand that the story needs to play out for itself, and that if there are factions on any side, whether it's in the media or on the left or the right, that are trying to move this along or overemphasize certain parts of it, it ends up becoming counterproductive. I was just talking to my dad, though, and he says he's never seen anything like this in history, anything at all. And so I do ask you what your gut is to characterize what we've seen over the past week from the top down in this administration, from this president.
Well, it is disturbing. As you mentioned at the beginning, I'm on the Intelligence Committee, and the intelligence that the president shared with the Russian ambassador and foreign minister was the highest level of classification in our government. It's the kind of thing you don't even talk about having, let alone any of the details. That's very, very disturbing from a point of view of national security, because the country, and I can't confirm what country it came from, but our country's going to stop sharing information with us that in turn will compromise national security. That was, I think, a very serious issue. On the other hand, we don't know the details of what was shared in that meeting. And the same thing goes with the meeting with Director Comey. And that's why I think, we've got to try to get to the bottom of this. If the White House has tapes, which the president suggested that they did, now's the time. We've got to see them. And I think we're going to make every effort up here to get a hold of all the evidence that we can on both of these matters, because they are very serious.
Senator Angus King, thank you very much. And coming up, if the intelligence